again. If you're listening to this or watching because we're on video now, it is Thursday. That may seem weird to you if you're a regular Appodlachia listener, but we have a special bonus episode today. Bonus, and what we anticipate being a bonus series on Queer Appalachia and the fallout of that organization. Now, if you've been following us and listening to us, we've referenced this a number of times in the past couple of weeks, and we're going to go a little bit more in depth into it now. We want to stay on this topic and stay on this organization until some accountability happens. So to give you a little bit of a brief background, and we'll put a link in the show notes. We'll put a link, I guess, in the description of the YouTube video. But Washington Post magazine did a story on Queer Appalachia, which, for lack of a better word, it was a loosely formed organization. They had a huge Instagram following. They claimed to be involved in a lot of harm reduction and LGBTQ advocacy. They would collect a lot of money from different things, such as selling merchandise for Patreon, through Venmo, PayPal, all those sources. And we're supposedly doing a lot of good in the community and providing back for Appalachia, and had some really inspiring posts, spreading a lot of joy in the world as well. And the article called into question a lot of things, including where the money went that they collected. And it was pretty inconclusive, I think you could say, because there were no financial information whatsoever, it seemed like, other than just anecdotal evidence. And when pressed for financial information, documents, etc., none were provided by Queer Appalachia. And that was problematic, obviously. They don't operate as a 501c3, and John will kind of get into the nuances and specifics of that here in a little bit. But needless to say, it's really hard to hold them accountable because they didn't have to publicly file anything, and they were supposedly collecting a ton of money. So a lot of questions, and the answers from Queer Appalachia, which again we'll also get into, were inadequate. It's relevant to us, besides the fact that we cover Appalachia, hence the name, is because we actually had a member of Queer Appalachia on our show back in, I believe it was March, yeah. And we have since pulled that episode. It was an interview with Chelsea Dobier-Keene, who was at the time had been working with Queer Appalachia for over a year. And we pulled it because we can't verify at this point the accuracy of things that Chelsea said on the show. And until we can or can't, we are not going to have it published because we do not want to be spreading potentially misinformation before all of this is settled. And so that's a general background. Again, I encourage you to definitely look at the.
I dropped my phone.
You're gonna make me stay up all night editing this.
This is why. This is why video is bad. Because if I make a noise, you literally can just pull my audio file and it's fine. But
I mean, I could do that too. It'll just be a giant gap in the video. I'll put a graphic up that's just got that dog with the cable coordinates mouth saying "We'll be right back." Technical difficulty. Nailed it.
I like that.
Anyway,
and in the background, it's just me going, "I dropped my phone."
Be up all night editing this one. I love it. Anyway, so that's kind of where we are. We've got some updates to the Queer Appalachia situation. Their Instagram account has been taken over by someone else, but possibly not. We're not really sure on that one. Air quotes. We'll say air quotes on that. Their website is gone. Their Facebook page, I believe, has been shut down, or at least temporarily. Their Patreon, however, is still up, and supposedly their Venmo and PayPal are still up. So, if you are a Patreon member, I would encourage you to reconsider that, at least in light of recent events. And a little bit more context to this, like today, we reached out to the author of the Washington Post article. We're unable to get them on our show. And we also reached out to Chelsea, who, like I mentioned, from Queer Appalachia, we had on our show before. And she has yet to respond to any of our emails. So still waiting there. Happy to have her perspective to defend anything that has been said. But had to do our due diligence, John.
For full transparency's sake, we should let them know we were not able to reach out to the to the author themselves. We had to go through their publicist, and their publicist, I believe, remind me if I'm wrong, said that she couldn't meet with us for the rest of 2020 year, at least.
Big year.
You're gonna write an article. I mean, I'm happy if you have that much success. We'll be there one day. Congratulations. One day I can tell people I won't talk to them for half a year.
Now. It gets me out of having to talk to people. So
yeah,
honestly, don't blame her. The method's great.
We don't even have a publicist, so
that's right.
That's how I knew she was legit.
Yeah, when we get publicists, that's when we know we'll make big. Anyway, so a lot of the story, though, just to kind of give you a little bit more context before getting into some of this, centers around the titular figurehead of Queer Appalachia, a person by the name of Mamone. And Mamone has responded to a lot of the allegations in the article. It was posted on Queer Appalachia's website before the website was taken down. However, we use the good old Wayback Machine, and we have it pulled up here, and we're going to go through a number of those allegations. But, John, tell us a little bit from your perspective, all of this. What does this mean for us, for Appalachia? Why are we still talking about it? Why do we care about it? Why don't we just move on?
Well, I think it's twofold. One, we all know if you're Appalachian and you feel like you've been duped, you're going to always kind of be, it's the, if you're not with us, you're against us mentality that Appalachians have always had, especially if they feel like they've been cheated by one of their own. That's kind of I think the feeling right now. Plus, I mean, it was an organization that a lot of people trusted. And let me be clear, they were vulnerable people too. They were people who didn't have a lot of other options and said, look, this is finally a community that I can exist in and be able to, have a safe space to do all of these things. But unfortunately, we're starting to find out that that's not actually the truth. And I think that's one reason why it's such a big deal, because if you think about Appalachia, I mean, obviously the stereotype is that Appalachia is not very welcoming to people in the LGBTQ plus community. And let me say, I hate stereotypes, but there is a good bit of truth to that in terms of our past. Now we're starting to see a change, but our past is not great. And when you see Queer Appalachia, it's really the first big organization in Appalachia for LGBTQ plus groups to take off and to really create that safe space. I think that's why we're still talking about it.
And speaking of just vulnerable populations, Appalachia in general is a vulnerable population. So getting duped by our own is even more frustrating. Look, we've all been there too. Wayne from Wayne's Computer World in Marietta, Ohio, man. I got fucked by that guy, and he actually, I think, was the subject of a federal probe I think he went to prison. Pretty sure for fraud. Anyway, I bought a computer from there. It was a piece of shit, and it was loaded with illegal software. So, not that I'm still bitter. Still bitter.
Hey, to be fair, you've now, I mean, on record, been duped twice, and in both times resulted in an investigation.
And it was upon the recommendation of one John Eisner that I went to a place called Really Cheap Geeks in Parkersburg, West Virginia, to get my computer fixed. Fucked me hard.
They treated my mom well. I told you that's all I knew about him.
Recommendation.
Look, to be fair, I have the world's
That's fair
shittiest
point.
computer.
Fair
What
point.
the hell
No
do I
time.
know?
Fair fucking point. Well, you know, now that we have all of this out of the way, Jesus. Well, like we said, this is a developing situation, I think is fair to say. And that's why we're planning on making this a series, because there's going to be more about it. Our commitment is this, John and I, Appodlachia. See, I can do gestures now because we're doing video. Now,
Yeah, I really feel like you need like a burning cigar. I feel like that would really help right now.
Still waiting for it. Use that Patreon money. Now people can see how animated I can get. Our commitment is this. We are going to stay on this until one way or another we find accountability with the finances of Queer Appalachia, or we just get so sick and tired of talking about it, or rather people get sick and tired of listening to us about it, that we lose every single listener to this show. So, but this is the thing. It is unacceptable. It is not that hard to be transparent about your finances and get their shit together. Them to do that, and to show that we put our money literally where our mouth is. We are releasing our financial transparency records from the one donation that we made from money from our dear listeners. This was a couple months ago. We did a fundraiser for Second Harvest Food Bank of East Tennessee.
Our first
Patreon
month. Our first
Second
Patreon
Harvest
month
of East Tennessee. And we donated that money. And you know what? Some of the money came out of our own pockets, because I added to the check to the harvest. I made up for the platform fees and the taxes that were taken out through the Patreon. And so,
and we still sent out shirts.
That's right. So I will post on our Instagram and wherever else the letter from Second Harvest Food Bank we got, the PayPal receipt or whatever the hell it is, and then whatever else I can find to be transparent, to show it's not that hard. Anyway, how to get that out of the way. John, you have been looking through Queer Appalachia, and in particular Mamone's responses to the allegations made in the article. Let's go through. Let's just start plowing through them.
Okay. As two things. One, I know Chuck's background is a lot better than mine. I'll work on it. I don't like video, but I'm going to consider that my studio is under construction. It's really just my basement, and it's not a finished basement. Second, Chuck already hinted at this, or I guess fully mentioned it, that the website for Queer Appalachia has been taken down, but on August 17th, the site was up, and it showed a whole writing,
a manifesto
from Mamone. And I'll start at the top. Yeah, it kind of was. And in it, Mamone goes through 7 different allegations and gives 7 different answers. And at the top, they list that these are not included in any of the allegations, but I do want to include them in this to be fair and transparent. They list that they've never paid a salary to themselves and that they live off disability. And the big one here that I want to spend a couple minutes on is Mamone claims that they don't want to be a 501c3 for a number of reasons, but one of the big reasons is it would force a disclosure of everyone who received money. So there are people out there who receive funds and help from Queer Appalachia who may not be out of the closet, may be hiding from certain people, and don't want their identity given out. Now, I think that this is a great reason. I mean, it makes sense, right? What I did, though, I decided that I would do some digging in terms of other tax filings from other 501c3s, people that would be under the same category, which would be fundraising and dispensing funds. That would be what Queer Appalachia is under. I went through those 501c3 filings, and I didn't find a list of individuals who received money. I only found the only requirement that I could find in terms of, I think it's a I'd have to look up the form number again.
990.
I believe it's like 900 or some 990 is what it, yeah. So I went through the 990s of all of these. There was no list of individuals. It didn't even ask for a list of individuals. The one list, Chuck, that it did make you give, though, was salaries of employees. All board members. That is required. It is 100% required. And if you pay them a dime, actually, no, even if you don't pay them, you still have to list them. So whoever's on the board, if you don't pay them, you put 0. But if you do pay them,
I'm fairly certain you have to also put like executive director salary or whoever is a paid employee as well.
You do, yeah, you do. It's board members and employees. So to me, this is it's either two different scenarios. One, Mamone doesn't know that you really don't have to publish all the individual names, or at least that's what I'm finding, that you don't have to. Or two, Mamone doesn't want to be a 501c3 because Mamone doesn't want anybody to know how much is being paid out to employees. Now, I have no proof of either, but I do want to at least put that out there.
Or it's worth mentioning that, and I think I found this on Reddit, but I believe that it was also listed on their website because this is directly pulled from their website, and this post was in response to the Washington Post article. Quoted, Queer Appalachia is not registered as a nonprofit organization, nor are most of its alleged charitable recipients. I think this is actually quoted from the article. Operating this way is an intentional political statement, QA says on its site, where it positions itself as an alternative to the nonprofit industrial complex. This is part of what could make QA innovative. The informality can be freeing and vary of the moment. Traditional fundraising can be out of touch with or even downright hostile to the needs of marginalized communities. So their argument, at least in that statement, would suggest that they were pushing back against institutionalized charitable giving in a way, which, okay, but the reason why nonprofits exist in their current form and requiring 990s is to hold them accountable so that they can't just take the money and put it out willy-nilly anywhere.
Yeah. And Mamone, to be fair, Mamone does list that in the responses to the allegations, says it's kind of like an anti-fascist type movement for them, in that now they will not be able to participate in those because of this kind of changing of the ways for Queer Appalachia. But we'll get to that in a few minutes. So I say we just go down the allegations that Mamone listed and we go down the answers. And hey, you and I may not even agree. We may not agree that if Mamone's answer is good enough or bad enough or whatever, but it'll at least be a fun time while we've got it.
The one thing I think that we can agree on is we just want more transparency. That just to be clear and to reiterate that a lot, that's what we at Appodlachia are asking for, is transparency. Show us the receipts. That's all.
That's the thing, is like, I guess we should put a caveat in here, or a disclaimer. Chuck and I have nothing in this. I mean, literally, it does not matter if Queer Appalachia shows up tomorrow and has financials in hand and proves everything wrong. It doesn't matter if it's the opposite. To us, it has no effect on us, but it is a big enough topic in Appalachia that we need to talk about it, and we need to actually have some type of discourse on it, because, hey, the people involved really are not having a discourse. So somebody's got to.
That's our stake in the game.
I mean, that's the thing. Yeah. All right. So let's go on allegation 1. The first allegation listed is that VA harm reduction, Virginia harm reduction, and Queer Appalachia teamed up to get a $300,000 grant. Essentially, Leo, who is part of, are they part of Queer Appalachia at the time, or Virginia harm reduction?
They were, I think, a volunteer with Queer Appalachia.
Okay. Leo ends up quitting, and this is not before Leo sees Mamone drive up when Leo's about to quit in a brand new 2019
great truck.
Pimped out,
very reliable
Ford
truck.
Ranger.
Nothing wrong with the truck inherently.
Yeah, decent
American made,
decent truck.
Probably union.
I'd drive it.
Probably union made, and then somewhere in Pontiac, Michigan, or somewhere.
So, Chuck, when I read that to you, what sense of an
Well,
allegation do
John,
you get?
my sense is that they're suggesting, they meaning the article, or, and I guess in this case, Leo, suggesting that Mamone may have used the funds that Queer Appalachia collected to purchase a nice 2019 Ford Ranger. That that's my takeaway there.
That's also what I got from it. Uh, without calling
Quack.
a duck, they ended up just saying this person's quack. This thing's quacking.
It's
So
ducked up. It's ducked
that's
up.
what this allegation is. It's essentially, yeah. Now, Mamone's answer to this, I actually like this answer. This is just my take on it. Mamone's answer, it's a little bit longer than this, but I summarized it with saying that the truck is paid for half by Mamone's parents and half by disability. Lays it all out there. Talks about how they're paid through disability, actually gives the amount of money, which I think is, a pretty clear sign if somebody's willing to give you a dollar amount of what they get, which was like $9. Well, actually, there's one more, and I think it's a major flaw in Mamone's argument, but it'll be coming up. So, paid by Mamone's parents and by Mamone's disability. That's the answer to it. Well, Chuck, your take.
I thought that what you were going to tell me is that Mamone's response was, well, I only got the basic edition. I didn't get the one with leather seats. I didn't get the
touchscreen.
The quad cab with the truck. I didn't get the one with
the
truck
nut,
the Flowmaster exhaust on. I just thought, it's just like every kid that went to my high school. No, I think.
Oh yeah.
I don't reason to dispute that Mamone uses disability money or money from Mamone's parents to pay for the truck. There's no reason, and we're not disputing that.
Yeah.
However, it is a little suspect. And again, sure. It would be so much easier to believe.
Yeah, to me,
if we had the financials.
Yeah, and one, that's a huge issue. Two, another issue, and this is just me looking at something really quickly. If you look at
cliffhanger.
Okay. So so I was going to say that Mamone actually gives the amount that the payment is. $230 covered by Mamone, and the remainder, which I think is half, another $230 covered by Mamone's parents. So to me, look, anytime somebody like that I've seen in terms of allegations this big lies, it tends to be in a non-specific way. They try to go around something. They make circular arguments. They don't give you specifics. Mamone here is pretty specific. Says the amount that the truck is getting per month, says what Mamone is getting for disability. To me, this is the most truthful Mamone has been.
Yeah.
At least in appearance.
One could make the argument, is it a wise decision if you're receiving Social Security disability to be purchasing a brand new truck? We're not here to litigate that. But yeah, I think, and for the story, it makes it certainly adds color to the story. But we're trying to be as fair as possible here, and based on the information provided, we don't have a reason to doubt Mamone on this. But the other thing is the Ford Ranger, the 2019 Ford Ranger, is the least consequential thing about this story.
Yeah, I get what they're trying to do in terms of the writer and Leo here. I'm going to say Leo because supposedly that's the source. But I think even the writer here, if you look at the way that this is written, it's supposed to draw you in and make you think that there's a misuse of funds when we really don't have any proof showing that the truck is being paid for by QA funds. And the fact that Mamone gives an answer, I think, is far more than what the writer had in terms of evidence.
It's not like a Wayne LaPierre riding on a yacht situation. It's a little bit murkier than that. But fair enough.
Plus, okay, if QA is pulling in as much money as what the article says, or at least alludes to, I mean, a Ford Ranger, like, don't you think that it'd be like something a little bit pricier? Like Ford Rangers are like, they start at like $27,000. I mean, that's a lot of money, but if you're really pulling in this much money,
I'm surprised Ford Rangers start out so expensive.
They may start a little cheaper.
I mean, it's it's not a Tesla truck, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, we're not here to litigate that issue.
That'd be nice. All right,
hit me.
Let's go to the second allegation, Chuck. Second allegation.
What is a coat drive?
There's a coat drive. A coat drive occurs there. A coat drive. You ask people for coats so that you can donate them to people in need.
It's not where you put a coat.
Coat drive.
Ford Ranger. And drive now.
And then drive. No. So there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of coats that are donated, and gift cards. That's a big thing here. Gift cards are donated. Where did those gift cards and those jackets go?
Queer Appalachia by people, by fans, followers,
correct,
whoever, and was tasked with then distributing it, being the gift cards and the coats, to those in need.
Right. Now, Mamone's answer to this is that the gift cards were used to buy coats and sent directly to people, but those people were never written down because Mamone didn't want to out these people by writing down who got the gift cards. So within your own organization, you're not willing to write down a name, which that to me is a little sketchy. Or you're not insuring the mail that like is going to this place where you can keep a receipt or something. Mamone also says, this is the big one, 450 coats were shipped.
John, you do a lot of shipping. You know, we have a very robust merchandise distribution outfit based out of John's basement. And you're, among other things, that you peddle a lot of fine wares. Let's be real. What 450 coats would cost an ass-load amount of money to ship.
Well, 450 coats, if it's assuming that a coat is under a pound, that's priority mail, which puts it around $7.97 to $10.50.
I'm not
per
good
coat.
Enough at math, but that's several thousands of dollars.
Sorry, priority mail is over a pound. Let's say it's over a pound. If it's first class mail, then you're looking at like $7.
So here's the other thing too. Then the easy solution here is to say, like, where were some of the gift cards for? You know? And maybe provide some document evidence.
Right.
Like show some pictures of all the coats. I mean, if you're an organization that's looking to build upon this, then you want to advertise the good work you're doing. You're telling me you don't have a single picture of the 450 coats that you sent out?
Well, hold on, Chuck. Mamone does say that there were pictures uploaded to Instagram that showed the coats. The problem with the picture in a lot of people's eyes is that they don't show them being shipped. They just show them arriving. So the allegation isn't that they didn't have the coats. The allegation is that they let the coats sit to the side and not do anything with them.
You know, in a list of 8,000 people, the question remains is did it ever go out? Here's the other thing. There's so many ways that you could show this. You would have a receipt from the post office. Because you don't just take all those packages and shove them in a mailbox somewhere. You got to go to the post office. Who was in charge? Walk me through that process, you know?
Yeah.
That's the thing. If Mamone wants to be believed, Walk us through that process. What was it like to ship 450 coats and or gift cards? That must have been a pain in the ass. I can't imagine doing that. How did you get them on? How many trips did it take?
And I
Talk
think the
to
big
us about the details here. Show some receipts.
Yes. Yeah, show me a picture of your Ford Ranger with 450 boxes in the truck. Just show me anything. And the big thing here, Chuck, is that knowing a lot about shipping, there's two things that happen here. Either one, Mamone, which this is the smart thing to do, you go on and buy your package slip. You do it, you prepay it, essentially. It saves you money in the long run, and it allows you to box everything up at one time. Or you go to the post office and they print something out, which is a terrible idea, but they will do it, and you have a receipt. So either they have a receipt or should have a receipt, or they have all of the online transactions that they made for each label, which that would be provided.
Either way, there's a way to prove it. And, it's...
100%.
A lot of these answers are laced with so much ambiguity that it allows for them to question the validity of the allegation. But here's my thing. I can buy a couple coats, take pictures of them, post on Instagram saying, I collected all these coats and I shipped them out to, whoever, orphans or something. And that's essentially all the evidence that Mamone provided and Queer Appalachia provided, So I could do that easily,
right.
And it clearly would be a fraud, like I said. So if you're going to make these...
Yeah.
If you're going to put yourself out there and say that you did this, you have to show proof, especially given everything else about this, which some of which we'll get into and some of which we already mentioned. It just smells so fishy,
Yeah. I mean, yeah, this is one of the allegations to me that when I first read it, I thought it would be like one of the least important allegations. But after looking at the answer and kind of dissecting it, I think it actually creates a foundation for what we're about to go through. So let's go to allegation number 3. This, to me, is one of the biggest allegations, not only based off of what the allegation is, but based off of the answer, because Mamone, in my opinion, shoots themselves in the foot, and we'll talk about why. But allegation 3 is tokenizing rhetoric. And what is tokenizing rhetoric? It's essentially you always post something. In this case, they say the allegation is that Queer Appalachia, every time they ask for money, always post a black trans man, because they know that asking for money and posting that picture will create this sense of need, essentially. This also includes a quote, well, I guess it would be a source, which is Shane Hicks. And Shane says that he would essentially try to comment on these things, calling them what they look like, tokenizing rhetoric, but those comments would be deleted, which is a big issue. Right. Anytime they were posted, they would, because it looked like to him that it was anti-black is what it looked like. And so anytime Shane would point that out, Shane's comments would be deleted.
Right. It's troubling allegations, and obviously John and I are both white guys. We don't have a lot to offer when it comes to talking about this, but what we can do is understand that argument and understand the allegations being made, and they're troubling. Absolutely.
The other thing that we can do is look at Mamone's answer without looking at race at all, right? To me, this is a huge issue, right? But Mamone's answer really is somebody throws blame at you and you throw it back trying to prove that person's actually in the wrong. Because what Mamone does here is says that actually Shane Hicks, worked with Queer Appalachia and alludes to Shane kind of lying in terms of those comments being deleted. Hicks worked with Queer Appalachia, according to Mamone, for Black History Month and was paid through one of their programs $25 a month from their Patreon, given COVID relief and a laptop. Chuck, here is my favorite part of this answer. Mamone says, and this is Mamone's words, according to my records, this equals $565 given to Hicks. So you're telling me that you have records on this one person,
and
but you have no other records?
So, and that was through Patreon.
Nope.
She said that was through Patreon. Mamone said
$565 since September 17.
And presumably, so according that Mamone's records say that. So presumably, you might be able to find other records in Patreon for other financial transactions. Because I don't think Patreon discriminates based on where the money goes. I'm pretty sure there's a paper trail for everything.
I wrote, wait, you have records? This to me is Mamone's worst argument, and even if you want to believe everything that Mamone says about Hicks, it only proves that Mamone has records.
You're seeing
it's a double-edged sword.
Just be released out of his shell. We have not adequately talked about your history as a debate champion on this show, and what a perfect time to bring it up. The argumentation, the formation, the execution laid out in front of you for all of you to see and hear. Beautifully done,
right
Big
out
John.
there.
But yeah, and you know what? You're absolutely right, because either way, Mamone is kind of fucked on this. Because if Mamone's telling the truth, then that also means there's more records.
Yeah.
And if Mamone is lying, then Mamone's lying.
Here's my favorite part about this, Chuck. Mamone is able to go back to September of 2017 and lay out these financials for you, but can't give you any financials from 2019 or 2020 to prove that the Washington Post article isn't true.
It's funny how those 2 years are dark periods. Pretty commonly known. It's kind of like the Y2K bug, John. If you're, boy, that dates us all here. Anyway, yeah. You make a great point, and like we said before at the beginning of this episode, I will show you the records from our Patreon where we dispersed funds to our PayPal that then went to Second Harvest Food Bank to show you it is not difficult to pull those records. It is, in fact, it takes, I think, 5 clicks, and that's a liberal estimate.
Yeah, I think that's I think that's probably 4 clicks too many. That's the thing. I mean, we'll show it to you. We will not show you our current salaries from the Patreon because why would we? You know, Chuck?
6 figures, of course. However, we're also not putting ourselves up as charitable organizations giving people money.
Yeah, so to me,
we definitely don't take that.
We also don't make that much money, and
you can actually see how much we get each month because it's publicly displayed. So, you know, John,
we tend to lose money.
Econ 101 and 102, and what I learned, because they were required for my degree, and what I learned is you've got to spend money to make money. One of these days, I'm gonna do it.
Boom. But also, my econ class never covered podcasts, so fair. I'm just assuming that we're a major corporation.
It's not a major corporation. It's Queer Appalachia, and we would like to know where some of that money went. It's great. It is great that there are records for Patreon disbursements to Shane Hicks. Would love to see those. Would love to see all the other ones because they had a shitload of patrons and still do. Still do. There's over 90, I believe, still that are patrons on their Patreon.
Yeah, I have to say, I think we were part of that. We released that photo showing that they still had 105, and like 2 hours later, they go down to in the 90s.
Anyway,
yeah. So, allegation 3 and answer 3 is probably
it really is. It's really,
to me, one of the biggest.
It really
ones.
is damning when you start to peel back the layers of that onion and look and realize that they're showing their cards. But anyway, I think we've dispensed with that one enough. Why don't we get to allegation 4?
Yeah, allegation 4. So allegation 4, this to me is a more difficult allegation to talk about because in no way, shape, or form would Chuck and I ever question somebody's mental health or question anything that they're going through. So I actually feel for Mamone here. And you'll know why in a second. Mamone, this is the allegation. Mamone said that Mamone, worked as an audio engineer making good money for places like Coachella and SiriusXM. But when SiriusXM was reached out to, there was no name associated from Mamone to SiriusXM. There was no employment history. The article does give a caveat that they could have been an independent contractor, but turns out that's not what happened. The actual answer to this is that Mamone admits that they lied, and they lied due to alcohol, drugs, and what they call shame. Big thing here is that Mamone was suffering from dissociation disorder, which it tends to be when you are not living in the current situation that you're in. You tend to live outside of it, creating a falsified reality. These Mamone posts on Facebook and actually says that they're working for SiriusXM. They're doing all of these things, doing sound and audio engineering for SiriusXM and Coachella, and actually admits that they did post these things. It's not even up for debate at that point.
They posted that they worked for SiriusXM, for South by Southwest, for Coachella, and is now owning up to the fact that that was a lie.
Yeah, full disclosure, point blank, gives a reason and does put a disclaimer in there, Chuck, that Mamone never put the SiriusXM thing on a resume, never falsified a job application saying it, only said it on Facebook and in social media to kind of show everybody that they weren't living in the current situation they were living in. Which is moving back with their parents in their 30s and going through a really tough time.
Here to criticize, critique, or stigmatize mental illness. It's a huge problem in this country that we won't even attempt to get into right now. And that is not the issue here. The issue is that Mamone owned up to lying about that and also owned up to, as Mamone states, during one of their periods of disassociation, telling J. Mace III about being able to raise $100,000 for his company Awkward Talent, and so the illusion there is that also may have been a lie, or at least a fabrication of the truth. Again, the mental illness thing is awful, and it's something that, like, we have no idea how to even contemplate that, but that's what we're here to do, and we're sympathetic to that, of course. However, the issue still is that Mamone owned up to lying about these things. What else is Mamone lying about, and what else may have been done or said during those periods that they speak of?
Yeah, I mean, that's the tough part here. Now, I will say, I do think Mamone does a good job here, one, admitting and saying, like, I did lie about
Mm-hmm.
this, and telling the reason why. And Mamone does, I want to make this clear, Mamone doesn't go throughout this entire answer saying that this was the reason for every single issue.
Mm-hmm.
Just specifically in allegation 4 that we're talking about, Mamone brings this up. So I will say they don't end up using it as a crutch to get through every argument. And I have no reason not to believe Mamone in this. I don't know why else you would bring this up if it wasn't for the truth.
Right. Yeah, I agree. But it's troubling.
Yeah, I mean it's still a tough thing, especially when you have somebody running a organization that's raising thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars.
Right. And to quote a person from another podcast I listened to, mental illness is not your fault, but it is your responsibility. And when you are managing, as we will get into, Queer Appalachia and the financial infrastructure that is associated with that group, you have a responsibility to do it responsibly and appropriately.
Yeah, and the big thing here is Mamone did talk about their situation with mental health throughout running Queer Appalachia, was pretty transparent about that. Obviously not about the financials, but I don't think, and this is just me spitballing here and based off of what kind of dissecting what Mamone said, I don't think that the dissociation disorder is a massive part of the QA financial situation. I think that Mamone owns up to when it is an issue, and like I said, I don't think that they use it as a crutch or as a get out of jail card. So I will say that it is used sparingly.
Fair enough.
So allegation 5. This one to me is kind of all over the place, Chuck, and here's the allegation. The allegation is that Queer Appalachia used a photo from an artist, Cameron Bordelon, I think is how you pronounce it, for a GoFundMe for Electric Dirt, which Electric Dirt was a sub-entity of Queer Appalachia. Is that what you would call it?
It was a zine, I think, that they put out.
Okay.
So it was, I guess you could, yeah, I'm not really sure. It
was a side project,
right? And I believe it was something that they were selling, in order to raise funds for something.
Right, and there was a cover, right. And the cover is what was used with this photo. The answer is Mamone says that they messaged what I'm assuming is an Instagram handle, the humble haberdasher, and had a conversation about this. The conversation went well, and Mamone believed that the Instagram was giving them permission to use the photo. About, I think it says like a year or so later, that the Instagram then messages Mamone again and asks essentially why they're using that photo. QA apologizes and offers to kind of give publicity to the artist themselves because of the issue.
Yeah. This is a situation where due diligence was not done, and when you're publishing something, it's pretty basic knowledge that you need to have permission to use photographs. Yeah. It's a big deal. And I just don't think that the way that was handled professionally. And I think that it kind of shows the lackadaisical nature of the organization, the sort of disorganized nature of Queer Appalachia and how they handle things like this. And that's not to say that, I mean, they're owning up to it, great, but it's just sort of a piece in this whole puzzle that just it stacks up, and it kind of adds to the problems with the but it's one, it's one in a lot that merits some attention, and I think here it's just due diligence problems when you're manufacturing a publication like this and one that you are going to sell. You got to be really careful with this kind of stuff, and using photos without permission and without someone's rights being signed off on it is a big deal. And so, like I said, this is kind of minor, but it is just another one of those pieces in the puzzle, kind of showing the disorganized nature of the organization. Mm-hmm.
I think this is a perfect example of getting too big too fast. One of those things that Mamone was not prepared to take things on, and that's pretty obvious, but also wasn't prepared to put others to delegate the things that they needed to delegate. That's a big thing here. And to me, once you start reaching this kind of new organization status, you have to start planning very quickly and you have to start organizing. To me, it didn't happen here. And I'll talk later about how Mamone essentially, who Mamone blames for that.
Yeah. Well, and moving on, because we've just got a couple more left. Allegation 6.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a ton to say about this one. I think Mamone reads this portion of the article as it seems like a personal affront, because what it says essentially is that the person that wrote the article for the Washington Post talked to a bunch of people who volunteered with Queer Appalachia, and basically all of them said, while we were volunteers, Mamone was the only person that moderates social media, the only person that makes decisions about programs and initiatives, and the only person with power over the money, essentially the sole person in charge of Queer Appalachia. And Mamone does not dispute this, but essentially interprets this as an attack, to which I think what it does is it lays the foundation that the buck stops with Mamone. And
right.
I dispute that. And while they may be offended by it, it's not disputed, and it just seems like it's the facts, nature of everything. And in our conversations with Chelsea back when we recorded that episode in March, that was the implication that we got too, was that Mamone was the one that was in charge and ultimately made a lot of the creative and financial decisions.
Yeah. And yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. I don't want to spend too much time on that one, but I think just suffice it to say, Mamone takes ownership for being kind of the main organizer behind Queer Appalachia, ran social media accounts, organized most of the projects, yada, yada, yada. And so that means the responsibility lies on their shoulders. Now, allegation 7 is interesting. This is essentially talking about how Mamone worked with Leo and was talking about, and Leo, of course, we referenced earlier, was a volunteer, and talking about creating a budget to hire Appalachian queer people of color as the proposal for the grant, the grant that they had applied for had promised, right? So, as terms of the grant, they would hire a color. And so the article continued to state that Mamone was solely in charge of the fund allocation, as is suggested in what Mamone previously said. But according to Leo, wanted to offer a salaried position of $110,000 to a person, and wanted to offer a salary position of nearly $110,000, someone who was a white person. So you can already kind of see where there might be some problematic issues there. And so Leo obviously took issue with this. He decided to quit and basically just kind of called out the quote radical work that Mamone were doing. And so Mamone's response to this essentially was that Mamone claims that Leo wanted to hire a lawyer or a doctor, saying that the person had professional qualifications. And Mamone, I guess it's implied, did not want to hire somebody with those qualifications. and then disputes the figure of 110,000. This is kind of what I thought was a little bizarre. The article doesn't state what the position was, just the um, implying that the grant would fund it. And Mamone states that on a Facebook post from the Virginia Harm Reduction Coalition, the annual salary proposed for the executive director position was $40,500, not $110,000. And we did look up, and Virginia Harm Reduction Coalition did, in fact, post about that. Now, what is interesting is the article doesn't say that it was for that executive director position. Now, one can, I guess, presume from this that the money from the grant was going towards that. I do not know. And there was no real context given to that. So while we don't have any reason to doubt Virginia Harm Reduction Coalition, there's no reason to doubt that the figure was $40,500, not $110,000, and $110,000 seems kind of high for any nonprofit executive and a smaller organization. So yeah, this is just really bizarre. Seems odd to single out, but I don't know, John. What are your thoughts on it?
This to me, and people are probably going to disagree with me. This to me was the author of this article trying to pile on to prove a point, because to me, this was so. There was no evidence, and to me, you shouldn't print something that literally just has zero evidence at all. I think it discredits some of the work that's being done on the investigation. This isn't a massive issue to me. It seems like another one that they're piling on just to prove a point with no real evidence.
Right, and that's our take on those. You know, we talked earlier about the Ford Ranger. No real evidence the financials were used to pay for it. However, with a lot of things like this, if we were provided financials, it would be a lot easier to believe things like that. And this is this Mamone, what they're saying seems to line up, right? But because of everything else that's happened, because of all the other allegations, we have a reason to doubt the validity of what they're saying and the truthfulness of what they're saying. And so that's where the problem lies. And again, I know I sound like a broken record, but how do you remedy this? Provide the receipts. That's it.
Yeah,
that's it, John.
And the big thing here, and I think this is what the author of the article could have done. To me, I think the 110,000 thing versus the 45,000 thing is, I think it's just stupid. It's just kind of all over the place. And like I said, I think it discredits this actual allegation. Now, the author here should have focused on Mamone wanting to hire, if this is the allegation, a white person when they're already facing allegations of not being kind to the black community and you know, right. The tokenism, the actual rhetoric that they're using. If the author focuses on that and looks at that allegation and can show something like Mamone not wanting to allow, you know, black people to have the same opportunities, then we've got a problem. But I think the way that this was worded was poorly worded, and I think it only jumbled that argument.
Yeah, you know, that's a great point. That really is the call of the allegation there, essentially, is right. That in that, according to this, would have been a violation of that grant because, as it says, the proposal for the grant promised to hire an Appalachian queer person of color. So that would have invalidated the grant. So again, lots of problems with that. Those are the allegations that Mamone and Queer Appalachia outlined on their website before taking their website down.
But there is one thing that we need to cover beforehand.
Right.
Before you sign off.
Right, I'm not signing off yet.
Sorry.
Okay. I was just saying, I think what we're going to do is parse through the rest of the evidence in future episodes to identify other allegations and try to come to some resolutions on them, as well as continuing to try to press for some financials from Queer Appalachia, because we know lots of Appalachians donated to them, and lots donated with the belief that they were going to these things, and it may very well be true that they did, but we don't know. And we have reason to doubt.
Yeah, and I think one of the last section that we should talk about is Mamone's conclusion, because Mamone does an entire conclusion where they summarize the arguments for and against Queer Appalachia. The big thing to me, Chuck, and this one is driving me nuts. It's driven me nuts all day since I've read it. Mamone essentially takes no blame in this at all. And this conclusion proves that, because while kind of giving here and there answers throughout the allegation portion, in the actual conclusion, Mamone just places 100% of the blame on this. And this is actually Mamone's writing. The truth is that Queer Appalachia was always mostly my work. Leftist organizing projects are always a jumble of people who want to participate and then drop out after a time, leaving the main organizers to continue the work. This is the story of Queer Appalachia and every other leftist organizing project in existence. The inbox is full of community that overpromises and underdelivers, being the constant means it always defaults to me. That is such a fucking woe is me argument.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, look at any leftist organization that's had any success. Yes, a lot of times there's some disorganization, but they all have a damn accountant.
Right. That has nothing to do with whether or not you hired a fucking CPA.
Yeah, right.
The big thing here too that blows my mind is, like, when you get into the nonprofit game and you know that you have to rely on volunteers, the number one thing that you should know is that there are always going to be flaky people who overpromise and underdeliver. That's the story of nonprofits. This has nothing to do with whether if it's leftist or on the right or conservative or liberal. Nothing to do with that. This is a nonprofit issue. And Mamone might have known that had, one, Mamone ever studied what nonprofits actually have to do, and two, if they had actually become a 501c and gotten some damn help from an attorney or a CPA or somebody that knows anything about these laws and these types of peoples and these types of organization. This is the problem with Mamone's whole argument, is that it's a woe is me type mentality, especially in the conclusion. And it's one of those things that it's somebody jumping into the nonprofit game who had no idea how to actually run a nonprofit and how to actually run a successful organization. Not successful in the sense of raising money. Mamone did a great job of raising money. That's proven. But a terrible job with organizing and actually being able to prove where funds go without blaming everybody else.
Do you yield the rest of your time, counselor?
I do.
Oh, boy. Hard follow-up there. However, I will say, looking back at the conclusion on the now defunct shutdown website, I'm reading, and this is actually probably one of the more interesting things. Again,
yeah,
they go with going forward, Queer Appalachia will be transparent with finances. In parentheses, that may mean QA can no longer support that kind of work in the region. Not necessarily true. And they also say they're engaging the services of an accountant who will keep Queer App books and provide regular transparency reports to our community. We will work hard to be transparent with the community to show everyone who participated and supported this work where the money goes. And then there was a form where you could contact them if you felt harmed by this project, by Queer Appalachia. Like I said, the website is dead. That form submission is dead. They said that they were going to get a CPA. Who's the CPA? Where's the finances? Where is a screenshot of the Patreon? Do that. Show some detail. It's not that hard. And the fact that they took this down, I think, is telling in and of itself.
The next steps for Mamone are really simple. Shut down the Venmo, shut down the PayPal, shut down the Patreon, stop taking any money in, because any money in is now a huge liability to you. And Mamone may not want to face this truth, but even though Mamone has not filed Queer Appalachia as a 501c, it doesn't matter. You still have to follow tax law. It doesn't matter if you are anti-fascist or you want to go out in a certain way. It doesn't fucking matter. The United States government is who has the authority over this. Mamone, I don't think Mamone knows how serious of an issue this actually is, and how high this could go. This to me could result in an FBI investigation easily.
Yeah, yeah. Anytime you deal with large amounts of money and you don't have any accountability to where it goes, and you do that under the pretense that it's going to a charitable cause, you're up shit creek without a paddle. And I tell you, you're right. And look, I can be sympathetic to not knowing these things or ignorance to a certain extent, but you got to take responsibility and you got to remedy and rectify the problem. And that we're not seeing that at all. We need to be, but we're not. And that's why we're going to keep pressing on this. Like you said, I'm looking at it right now. This is the Patreon, and it's still because it's public. 91 patrons at a minimum of $5 per month. All right? Now, I'm not great at math, but I think that's close to $450, $500. Right now, that to me is fraudulent money at this point.
Yeah, I mean, 100%.
100%.
No one knows where that money's even going. No one knows where that money's going because QA is not doing anything. Half of it's shut down. Half of it's quote unquote being taken over. This is a massive liability. And like I tell everybody, we all have one relative. If you live in the United States, you have one relative who wants their share of everything, and that's old Uncle Sam. You don't do it, he comes knocking.
Old Papa Sam. Yep, that's it, man. That's it. Well, look, we have only scratched the surface of this. There is so much more that goes into all of this. We're going to get into as much as we can and try to keep you all informed as much as possible. We take this issue so seriously because people gave up money, hard-earned money, to this organization with the belief that it was helping good causes in Appalachia. And right now we have reason to question that being the case, and we have reason to believe that it could have been fraudulent mishandling of money or massive incompetence at a minimum. And so that's why we're going to stay on this. And, we hope that you continue putting pressure on them as well. And we hope that we have some resolution.
We also hope that we can get somebody involved in this to come on and talk about it. I mean, that's the biggest thing right now is you can post a 7-paragraph essay all you want, but until people actually hear from you, it really doesn't matter. And so, I mean, if they're listening or if they're hearing about this, I mean, if you are part of QA, Mamone, if Chelsea, if either of you want to come and talk about it, we're more than happy to have that. If the author changes their mind and wants to talk to us before 2020 is over, we'd love that.
To be fair,
or if any of the people who reviewed, yeah. To be fair, I'm just kidding about that too. Like it's not bothersome. It was expected, but it's just funny because we never deal with publicists because we never have to. And the other thing is if you were a source on this, we'd love to have you on. Or if you don't want to reveal your identity, you're more than welcome to shoot us a DM. Let us know your thoughts. If you ask for the ability to stay anonymous, we will obviously grant that.
Yeah, and we'll try to put like a signal or something together where we can receive anonymous emails or something so that protect that anonymity. So look for that in the coming days, just to make sure that we're doing all our due diligence for that. But yeah, we want to hear from you all, so let us know, because we don't want to be the only ones out here about it, because it's just two random white dudes. That's not going to help anything.
Yeah, we're only good for making arguments. That's about it.
Well, that's it for this special bonus episode, and we hope that you got something out of this. We hope you stay with us, and next Tuesday on Appodlachia.